July 16th already, 2018. We'll call the meeting in order at 6:30. If I could have roll call, please.
Councilperson Starzinski.
Here.
Higgins.
Here.
Kelsey.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Parkinson.
Here.
Ross. And Mayor Carnes.
Here. All right, the purpose of this study session is the second in, could be a series of meetings in reference to discuss the fire department's life safety inspection program and fee schedule associated with the program and a sort of things. And we have Chief Martin here from the fire department. So if you would kick it off for us, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So after last time we met, after a brief discussion, I was directed to try to come up with alternatives to the current fee schedule that we had that some felt, may have been a little bit high for the service that we're providing. So I provided to you three alternatives or three options, and I'll go over each one briefly. But first, I just handed it out to you. I don't know if you got a chance to read it, but for a little of the background, while under the oversight of the state-appointed emergency financial manager, our current fire code enforcement team fee schedule was put in place by emergency manager order number 36. Since then, the adoption of this fee schedule, the FSET team has conducted fire and life safety inspections in most of the commercial businesses in the city. Been expressed by some that it was a little bit high. The intent of the code enforcement program is to bring all commercial businesses in the city up to an acceptable level of safety for the citizens, employees, patrons, and business owners, not to cause a financial hardship to the business owners. The program was designed to charge a fee that covers the cost of the inspectors, the equipment that they use, continued mandatory training, etc. If the mayor and council wish to continue providing this important service to those in the community, the following options are being proposed. And the first option would be status quo. Under this option, the Lincoln Park Fire Department continues to conduct annual fire and life safety inspections, certificates of occupancy, complaint investigations, and permit inspections as it is currently, using the fee schedule put in place by the emergency financial manager. The second option would be a reduced fee schedule. The current fee schedule for annual fire and life safety inspections is based on the square feet of a commercial building and includes one re-inspection that is not charged for. Subsequent re-inspections result in a fee of twice the amount of the original fee. The following is a proposed reduction in fees which divides the square footage groupings into a smaller group. This reduction would have the greatest impact on the mom and pop type businesses, which are relatively quick to inspect due to their size and who may also feel the greatest financial impact of the current fee schedule. The proposed fee schedule will assist most business owners, but the smaller shops will have the biggest reduction in fees. And if you go down, I listed the square feet for the size of the commercial building, the current fee that we're charging, the proposed fee, and then the percent change. I think listening to the people who spoke last time, and again, as I stated above, the smaller mom and pop type shops are the ones that feel the biggest financial burden. So we try to shoot for that being the biggest reduction. But the current fee is 0 to 3,000 square feet is $210. So we broke that up to 0 to 1,000. We went from $210 to $100. That's a 52% reduction in fees. The next one, we made another category of 1,001 to 2,000. Current fees $210. We reduced that down to $140. That's a 33% reduction. And then the third is 2001 to 3000. Again, currently $210. We reduced that down to $190 with a 15% savings. Then as we go up in square footage here, you're going to see the reduction gets less, and then eventually there is no reduction for the very large. But we have 6001 to 9000. I'm sorry, I skipped one. 3001 to 6000. Current fees $270. We reduced that down to $230, which is a 15% reduction. 6,001 square feet to 9,000. Current fees $330. We reduced that down to $300. It's a 10% reduction. 9,001 to 12,000. Currently $420. Reduce that down to $400, which is 5%. 12,001 to 20,000. Currently $540 down to $520, which is roughly a 4% change. And then none of the other ones were changed. The third and final option is going from an annual inspection to a biennial inspection. We would keep the current fee schedule, but conduct fire and life safety inspections on a biennial basis for low hazard occupancies such as the small retail shops, and annual inspections for public assembly and high hazard occupancies like gas stations and anything that had large storage space, the tire facility. This would essentially be a 50% reduction for low hazard occupancies that would now be inspected every other year, and it'd be status quo for the high hazard and public assembly occupancies. And those were the three options that we put before you, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Is there one particular option that you recommend?
I personally think the biggest benefit would be from the second option, which would be the reduction in fees, because again, a lot of the larger buildings and some of the chain buildings can afford that fee and they can absorb it without too much discomfort. If I heard the business owners, like I think I did, some of them just don't have that expendable income. It's still an important thing to have done, but the fee was just a little bit high. I personally thought it was a little bit high myself, and I think these fall more in line with what would be fair, what's comparable with other cities around us, even though, again, as I said last time, a lot of them aren't doing fire and life safety inspections due to reduced manpower.
And that would be still an annual inspection for everyone, right?
Annual inspection, correct.
Okay, I'll open
I have
it
a
up.
question, Your Honor.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Chief, I appreciate the reduction in the fee schedule. But one of the problems I have is the biennial inspections. If you come to a little insurance building and they've got a very good setup, there's no gasoline cans around, there's no chance of a real fire happening, why can't we go 3-4 years on something like that? Why do we have to come back when, you know, obviously they're in good shape?
Right. Well, so I can't come up with an option for every type of business. I thought these were fair options. If you want to discuss further options, I think there could be room for another thing that was discussed amongst me and the inspectors was so we can do a mailing and let them know what we're going to be looking for. We're going to be looking for your fire extinguishers. We're going to be looking for your exit lighting. You're going to be looking for a list of things, and if we come through and they meet everything, we could afford a discount to do that. If it, you know, what would normally take us a half hour or 45 minutes, and because they kept up with their business, they did it, you know, they had everything done for us, and we didn't find any, if we didn't find any violations, we could even give a further discount. That would be something that for the mayor and council to discuss.
Well, I wasn't really looking for a fee discount as much as if you walk into a situation where the building's in immaculate shape,
Right.
It's a little insurance office or something.
Right.
Everything's where it should be. They've got everything they're supposed to have. Why the need to come back in 2 years? Why not? Because they've, you know, we're going to throw them a little bone
Right.
for doing a good job.
In our experience, even the most diehard people will still make mistakes, maybe out of ignorance, maybe out of a shortcut. I personally feel it's safer if we come through annually and do it. If you come to my house right now, I will guarantee you will find a violation if you look. Life gets in the way. You tend to use extension cords for uses that you're not supposed to use extension cords for. You run a new phone line or a cable line, you pop a ceiling tile, you don't plug the hole that you put in there, maybe because you didn't know that you were supposed to fill it, maybe because you didn't have time. You're talking about our citizens and workers being in these buildings. I think it's the safest way to go.
What I'm really thinking about here, though, is if you come into this office that's well-kept and has everything it's supposed to have, you could probably only spend 10 minutes there looking for an extension cord or something.
Right.
Why would that fee be the same as when you're doing an original inspection? You got to go around and check for everything that might go wrong.
Again, you asked me to come up with a couple options. I tried my best. All three of us did. We tried to discuss different scenarios and tried to think of ways to be fair to everybody. Again, like I said, I know your intent is to get away from a fee altogether if it's somebody who runs a tight ship. I still think that the greatest benefit is to do an annual inspection. We can offer a discount. If somebody has everything in order, I'd be willing to go down to give a deeper discount. But at the end of the day, if we're going to come in annually and do an inspection, you have to generate the funds that it costs to go there and do that inspection.
What I'm saying, though, I think you're missing my point here. If you go into a gas station, or you go into a shop that has a lot of gas cans or torches or that type of thing around, you're gonna spend some time there.
Right.
If you walk into one of these offices and the first time it was kept immaculate, the way it should be, why not reward those people by, you're only gonna spend maybe 10 minutes there versus the half hour, 2 hours you might be spending at a gas station? Why not give them a break?
Well, I'm here for your direction, so if that's what you tell me you would like to do, I'm sure that we
I
can.
just don't see gouging someone who's doing a good job.
Well, I think if we reduced it down to $100 and we charged them $50, I don't feel that would be gouging at that point. I don't think any of it is gouging. Myself, the whole point was to make the businesses safer, make everyone safer. None of these, and again, I don't know what the thought process was. I wasn't part of making the current fee schedule. I did have a hand in making this one, so I feel that it's fair. I think that it will cover the costs that are generated. You got to remember, we're not paying for the guys to go in and do the inspection. They still have to research code. They still have to enter reports.
Yeah, if I could just, I think you guys are saying the same thing here. I think he is responding to what you're saying, is that there can be a reduction for those type of businesses where they're going in and spending a very little time to do that.
Okay, are we gonna specify that, though? I mean, sometimes, you and I, we will say, yeah, there's a possibility, but it's not put in print, and then 2 years down the line, they get hit with the whole.
Yeah, no, I think that's what would come out, and again, that's why we're having this discussion again, is this is what staff put together as, what they saw as the best possibility. Then based upon what the input from the council and the businesses are, then we kind of put together that final plan. But I think at this point, what I'm hearing from the chief is that we can, it may be a little bit hard to identify standing here today which businesses that would equate to, but we would have to come up with that so we can have it in writing so everybody knows what to expect.
Well, the reason that I'm really asking this question is not only on behalf of the business people, but we have a reputation in Lincoln Park of being a place that's hard to do business. People don't want to do business here because of all the red tape and the entanglement. This seems to me, if we don't give them a break for being good, it seems to be feeding right into that situation where people will say, you know what, I could go next door to Melvindale, I could go next door to Southgate, and I don't have to mess with all this. And I don't want that to happen. I want us to build our community up, not let it fall because we've got so many rules and regulations that we're just drying people out financially.
Right. Yes, I think we can look at that and make a recommendation. If that's the direction mayor and council want us to go, we can come back with those, try to identify in some way those businesses that again are very low risk, that we know we can get in and get out and do that. I mean, we'll just have to talk about that.
Right. And for the record, that was a common theme, that people who did keep their businesses in tip-top shape should be rewarded somehow. So that,
Yes.
I agree with you.
Okay, open to someone else. Go
Through the
ahead.
chair. Chief, the engineer in me and the engineer in me is screaming to get out. The term mechanical room, I know what that means. It applies to quite a cadre of different rooms. Could you give an overview so that when this meeting is replayed, what a mechanical room is? And I also went online and to find a sign, because a mechanical room has to be identified. I tried to find a mechanical room sign, which you can find a few, but what you do find a lot of is warning, unauthorized entrance not allowed. This is a mechanical room, and then give an idea as to what you consider acceptable in the entire universe of mechanical room signs.
Right. So I'm going to have Inspector Wright touch on that, just because he's experienced a lot more of what's in the city. But I will say that, so you're right, some of the required signage, the inspectors have done a really good job of kind of printing their own off, laminating them, and offering them to people who needed them. So again, our intent was never to cost anybody money or cause anybody a hardship. So we try to go out of our way to offer things that they may need. Sometimes they'll come to us and ask us for specific vendors. We let them know that we don't do that, but we do our best to work with them. If they can't find them, we'll look some up on the computer for them and offer them a range of people who may offer those services, and let them make the choice based on their needs.
Yeah, I found mine on eBay, so.
There you go.
That's what I was looking at.
So I'll have Inspector Bob Wright come up and talk to you about that.
Thanks, Chief.
I'm on duty, so if they call me, I gotta go, just so you know. So the mechanical room, we generally need them to mark it for the electrical panel and the gas shut-off. So I've never made anybody put up a sign that says mechanical room, but we do have them mark it for the electrical room. So we don't do the mechanical room. So normally the mechanical room will have your hot water tank, your electrical panel, or multiple panels, and that's what we need to know. So we haven't marked that because in case there's a fire, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to shut down the power, and we're going to try to shut down the gas. If there's an inside gas shut off, let them have the outside gas shut offs. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. So, and we do make the signs. We say electrical shut off, gas shut off. And part of that also may be normally what we would do would be to mark a door, not an exit. So sometimes that's in the same hallway. So most of the time those rooms are in a hallway. And so we don't want people going into the mechanical room if they're in a panic to get out of the building. So the mechanical room, we've never said you have to mark it. Electrical room, yes. Does that answer your question, or I don't know if
Yes, thank you.
that... Okay.
Anyone else?
Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
just some quick comments. I was lucky enough to go on an inspection with Mr. Bob Wright. So I like the idea of the reduced fee schedule, not so much the long-term, the years in between. The inspection that we went on, the company was not inspected in a while, and there were quite a few very simple violations. So I think it's just human nature to get laxed. So I think if we limit those time frames, it's better. It's safer. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I got a question through the chair.
Yes, sir.
What's the liability for the city if we don't inspect on some kind of regular basis? Are we liable for anything? Because, the state law says we have to do some kind of inspection. That's what started all this stuff.
I couldn't speak on the
Okay,
the
I'll just-
legality. I know there's been past case law that
Yeah, I'm just curious.
communities have been held responsible for not having it.
Make sure that, the citizens and the owner is safe, and we do our due diligence and make sure that, if something happens, they pull the records and they look at, what the history of that building was, with everything going on. The next question I got for you is that whatever policy we have should be fair and across the board. I mean, because you got to have that, because people don't want one business owner getting a discount of 25%, and the next business owner says, when I was talking to that person at coffee and they got 25, you only gave me 15, and my building's only 10 square feet more than those. How come,
Right.
And I think the third thing is that the issue has to be also is that we make sure that as we do the inspections that we do a history, which we're doing, I think, to show that how it's been in compliance and what it's been in compliance for and all that stuff.
Right.
And that would make it a lot easier, I think, for us to have some kind of idea when last time we went in there to make sure that how bad it's been or not been based upon whoever's been the tenant or however the building's been done.
Right.
And that's what I'd like to see. And the last comment is, I think, a lot of it, going back to Councilman Murphy's comment, a lot of it is the people just don't understand the rules, okay? And that's not to say that it's bad, but, people are people. I don't know all the rules when I buy a house. I got the guy coming in and telling me, well, you got to pull a permit. I'm putting something when you got to pull a permit. I mean, and that's just common sense, the fact that it kind of protects the homeowner and it also protects the contractor who's doing business in the city, because we require that. And I don't think sometimes I think is maybe it's not explaining the rules enough. It's more than that, and explaining it why. And nobody wants to pay more money than they have to. I mean, I understand that. But in the same token, there's a balance between the safety for everybody and the liability and everything else, and making sure that whatever would, God forbid, happen, that everybody's done the best they can to make sure it didn't happen. So.
Right, I agree. So to go back what you said before, the timing's a little bit unfortunate because I just completely lost my train of thought. Where we sent out notices to people a few years ago, and then it took a while to get the program up and running. So we did try to explain the rules. As far as we will do our best to make sure everybody's treated fairly and know the rules that they're playing by. Unfortunately, we haven't had time to build up that data set that you're talking about. So we've been doing this for a little over 2 years now, which essentially is just the first time around through the businesses, because we were a little slow getting up and running. We were a little inexperienced. We're kind of gaining that experience as we go. So we're collecting that data as we go. Prior to this, the buildings probably haven't been inspected close to 8 years, I would say, for most of them, when we had a full-time inspector. So we don't have that data available to us. But whatever direction we decide to go in, we will make sure that everybody knows and everybody will have the same opportunities, so nobody's treated unfairly. We share some of the blame for the notices going out and then them not getting inspected for a while, but those were the circumstances. So,
Hey, Chief? Yeah, back to the center. Hang on just a second. Would you describe from first contact and then walk us through the process of an inspection, and then include an example of a violation and how the violation is resolved, and to conclusion, if you would. So we have some time, so we might as well.
Sure.
And from first contact, how is the business owner first contacted when you're coming in and such? If you could go from there.
Again, I'm going to have Bob Ray come up.
That's all right.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't I do what we did the other day, if that's okay? So, when we started out, we each had an actual section of the city. So we would go to that part of the city, and we would basically walk up, knock on the door, present them with a card, tell them who we were, introduce ourselves, tell them why we were here, and ask if we could do an inspection. And at that point, for the first round that we're doing right now, which we're getting ready to wrap up, a lot of it is updated contact information, updated building information. So there's contact, structure, occupant, and then kind of general data. So we probably can take anywhere from 10 minutes to sometimes 45 minutes to gather that. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. Sometimes they don't know their email, they don't know a phone number. Sometimes we're not talking to the owner or the either the building owner and or the business owner, so they need to look that information up. So that's how we first start. And then again, if you're looking for the actual mechanical part of it, so we're all different. I snap a lot of photos, so I start on the outside. I mark the hydrants, I mark the FD access routes, I mark any kind of outside thing that I need to know. Gas shut off, if there's anything unusual about the building, and that probably takes a little bit of time also. And then once we're done with that, then we do the building. So I usually start at one side and work my way around, like on the left-hand side. I just keep working my way left. As I go through and I find a violation, I mark it on my computer, I snap a picture, I attach the picture to the report, and we just move on. And it's generally the way it gets done. Sometimes the owner or the manager or somebody in charge wants to stay with us. Most of the time they don't. They just say, just come back and let me know. So as we go through, we look for everything. So we have a list of probably 10 different code aspects, and out of those 10 different code aspects, for example, I'll use the code means of egress. So that's pretty common. So means of egress is, how do I get from this point out that door, down those stairs, out to safety? So this is a means of egress right here. This is a means of egress right here. The stairways are a means of egress, bottom of the stairways, and it just works its way right out. Does that make sense? And so let's say that we find something blocking that means of egress. Very common. Or the door is bolted, or the door is triple dead bolted. It's also very common. That's not allowed. That's a code violation. It's against the International Fire Code to have an exit door with an interior deadbolt. Okay, it's just a code. So when we find that, we snap a picture of it, we mark it on the report, and we just work our way around. When we're all done, we go over the report. I usually go over the report with what it's going to look like when they get the email. So this is your email. It's going to look like this. I show them just what it looks like. I show them here's the column of where it is. Here's the column of the code. Here's the code violation with the photos attached. Now we can't close that report until we set a re-inspect date if there are any violations. So it won't let us close. So we have to put an actual date to when we're going to come back. And we try to explain that it's not, maybe not that exact date, but we're not going to come back beforehand unless they call us. Okay, so we used to give them 2 weeks, now we usually start with a month. Sometimes, depending on what the occupancy is or what's happening, we might give them longer. And then they sign it, we sign it, and it gets emailed that day when I upload my data. Does that make sense? And during that whole process, we could have any number of violations, and we just kind of mark them as we go. Now, sometimes we say, look, we can't do this, this can't happen, we need to change this, and they'll change it right then. Hold on a minute, let me move that stack of tires away from the exit door. Okay, great.
And some that have not been able to come into compliance, and what have you done in those circumstances?
There have been some that have refused, like outright refused. And at that point, when we go back, we do the same thing, and then even then, we take as many photos, same photos, and I'll mark not done at the first reinspection. Probably 80% of the people, it's mostly done. On the people who have refused, we try to talk to them, we try to work with them, like why. Some people are going to refuse because they just don't like us, and some people don't have the time to get it done because they can't find a contractor. Hey, I'm trying to get my lights fixed, I can't get a contractor, which is pretty normal. We get running it a lot. Or I need a new door, the door didn't open, I can't find a door contractor. So sometimes I say, well, you tell me when it's going to be fixed. How long do you need? You need a month? You need 2 months? You just let me know when it needs to be fixed. As long as it's not major. Now, we've run into one situation where we shut it down that day, the room that they were in. So they had an illegal paint booth surrounded by flammable 5-gallon cans, probably 30 of them, no ventilation, no extinguisher, they weren't allowed to have it. And so that one got shut down that day. We called the building department, we called John Myers, said, hey, John, this is what we got. He said it needs to be shut down. We shut it down that day, but the rest of the business could operate. We said, keep going with what you're doing, but you can't use this. And they were okay with it. They shut it down, and they actually kind of cleaned it up by the time we were there the next time. So that's on the major event. We have had to write some citations, so they had to go to court on some people. And one of the places over there on Southfield, we shut down. So none of their fire exits were working, none of their exit doors are working, none of their egresses were clear. Multiple electrical problems, multiple fire alarm problems, sprinkler system was out of date. It was kind of a large hotel, and that falls under a different category. People who are here every day like you are, you know the building, it's a little bit different. People who are in a hotel or a motel, they may be from out of town, different category, so we shut it down. We said, when you get it fixed, let us know and we'll open back up. And that was usually when you get to that point, you can pretty much tell when you're at that point that it's not just a fire code, it's a fire building code. There's multiple areas that are above me, or you know what I'm saying, or next to me that they usually do. If they're not going to follow the actual fire code, they're not going to follow any code. So that's just how it worked. We tried to document it. We did it real well. We talked to the attorneys. We talked to everything. I did probably 3 pages of the actual documentation on it. And in the end, it really came down to if something happens and someone dies, it's on me and it's on you. And if they're unhappy and they need to get their business fixed, we're all covered. So that was the final decision on that. If someone dies, who are they going to come to? Because they'll tell you over and over, you know, but as soon as something bad happens, it's me and it's you that they're looking at. This is the first person they're going to call out. So we had a few with that. Most people are real compliant. And then, you know, we just kind of go on from there. Sometimes we walk in and people don't want it. Hey, I'm busy. I got things going on. Can you come back? Sure, no problem. I'll come back. What's a good day? Sometimes we've had to call people. So when we get to the larger businesses like on Papolis, you know, some of those businesses, we have to call ahead because you need someone to actually walk around with you. So they don't have the staff to just walk around and show you the room. So those businesses have multiple electrical rooms, multiple areas. They got mezzanines, they got storage, they got offices, they got industrial. So it's a whole bunch of different things. So you need someone who knows the building for that. Otherwise, you know, I can't even get into half the doors if you don't have somebody there with you. So does that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was looking for. Councilman Parkinson?
Yeah, so you're going to go with 100% compliance on this, are you not?
I'm sorry, what's it?
You're going to go with 100% compliance on this, are you not?
Yes.
What ends if somebody tries to stonewall you, never shows up, or never lets you in?
The way that the system is set up, and it's been a little bit kind of arbitrary, is if we go back for a third inspection, they're supposed to get a double bill. I don't know if we've done that hardly any. The only time I think we've ever done that is when they've basically said, I don't feel like doing it, and I'm not doing it. Okay, well, all right, we'll see you again. And
So it's going to be a very good penalty if they ignore you and not going to let you in.
yeah, you know what, I don't even know how many times it's been done. I think we, try to put some kind of pressure on them, and then some people, I just write them a citation. It comes to a point when you're out there your fourth, fifth, sixth time, and they're not doing it, and it's easy stuff, or it's just stuff that they just don't want to do. Okay, here's your ticket. Talk to the judge. Let he'll be the one to tell you what to do. And miraculously, within a couple days, it's fixed. I mean, we've never had it where it hasn't been fixed at that point.
So after you write the ticket and you go to court, do you go back and re-inspect it again?
Yes. In fact, there's been times where they've called me before they went to court, and I've gone that morning. So they're like, hey, I'm going to be in court at 10 o'clock. Can you go over there beforehand? The attorneys call me. Hey, if you get over there today, can you go over there today? And yep, and we went over there and did it, and brought back and just handed them a hard copy. Here you go, everything's clear. We want compliance. That's what we want. Our goal is for you to be compliant and safe. And then I think they work it out at the court. I don't think we've ever gone in front of a judge. I think they work it out before they get to that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. That just answered all my questions.
Okay.
When a new business opens as part of the CFO, is there an initial inspection?
Yes.
That goes with that. So the new businesses coming in before they get their CFOs, they have this inspection from you guys?
Correct. So they have it from the building department and all of the areas of that. So the plumbing, electrical, mechanical, general will do it. And then we do ours kind of more toward the end, once it gets filled with where they're going to have their items. And we're usually probably the last inspection that they get before we sign the CFO. And now that's different. I know you mentioned something earlier about that. That's something that is a little bit different than an annual inspection. So on a new CFO, not only are you, it's a new business, so you have all the same things you have to do, but now it's also time to bring the building up to the current code. So that's when the current code comes into place. So if the building was built in 1920 and they just bought the building last week, the inspection is a little bit more in-depth because now, there's certain things that you might need to bring up to code. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So sometimes that gets a little bit involved. And that's where some of the research comes in. Sometimes we've sat there for an hour looking up code books just to be sure, not as much that we didn't know it, just as to be sure that we're telling them the right thing. So.
We don't charge CFOs.
Sorry, what?
And we don't charge CFOs.
Okay.
Your Honor.
I guess it is no charge for the CFOs.
Lieutenant Wright, I wanted to ask you about the initial contact.
Yes.
Would it not be more cost-effective, instead of sending a professional firefighter inspector into that room, to have a clerk send a letter saying, we're going to be inspecting your building on thus and thus date.
Sure.
This is the information we're going to need when we arrive. And just that way, they won't have to look around for emails. They won't have to look around for all this other stuff that
We brought that up since the beginning. We've wanted that since the beginning. We've been told there'll be someone down the hall to oversee it, and once that happens, that's one of the first things that we want to do, is to get that happening. Now, when we've talked to other inspectors from other departments, that comes with a bit of a grain of salt, because sometimes you say, hey, I'm going to be there Tuesday, and I'm going to be there between 8 and 10 o'clock. Well, we get a fire Monday night, and I'm out all night from 2 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the morning. You probably don't really want me there at Tuesday, 10 o'clock. So sometimes it can also kind of, it works well. I think you're right. I think that's the way to do it. Set it up, pre-do it, but there's got to be a caveat that says, look, sometimes if a fire happens and I'm doing inspections, I'm heading over to the fire station. So that kind of happens. So that...
What I'm really looking for is, instead of wasting your time waiting around for someone to get a phone number or an address or something like that, if you had a clerk send that stuff out, a couple of weeks ahead of time when you walked in the door, that part of it would be there already.
You're right, and that probably would have helped in the first round, but once we're done with the first round, that's done. So all I got to do is walk up, open my computer, and say, has there been any changes in your contact information?
Exactly.
And they say no, and I go, okay, then we're done with that. So we're really anticipating, Scott and myself, that when we go out on the second round, and that's what we're calling the second round. Are we calling it that? When we go out on the next round, a lot of that's done. I don't need to find your electrical room. I don't need to measure your building. I don't need to find your roof access. I don't need to find all that. I've already found it on the first one. So there's other things that we want to concentrate on that are going to go into the safety issue that we didn't on the first round, but most of the information gathering is done.
One more quick question. I asked you a couple weeks ago when we discussed this. How close are you to having this information readily available to your staff when you arrive on scene? In other words, you can just look it up in your folder, or you can look it up on the computer as to this is what this building is all about.
I'll let the chief answer that.
So currently, they're using Surface Pros that aren't compatible with our Tough Books, but that is what we're hoping for the second year, is to get everything loaded onto our Tough Books also, so everybody will have that. And that's been a wealth of information, too. They can do fire pre-plans while they're doing their inspections. That way, all that information comes up. If there is a hazardous material in the building, they can note that. They can note where the fire hydrant connections are, on what side of the building. There's a wealth of information that will be very useful, and that's coming. It's not happening yet. And again, it's just due to the compatibility issues we have right now, but we'll find a way around that.
Long-term, or?
I think within the next year, we should be able to do that with no problem. But right now, in the meantime, they're bringing it back, especially for something that is an immediate hazard. Bob and Scott have been great about coming back and just holding training sessions on the shifts and saying, look, this is what we came across. They'll put it up on the training screen and kind of do a real short training video on it and kind of address all those hazards.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, good.
I was a little concerned when you were talking about, after you do the inspection, you give them so much time, and if they've made so much progress, maybe give them a little bit more time. But I heard a lot of, we'll give them a little bit more time, but nothing is a certain in time. And if we're wanting to treat everybody the same, something should be in writing about the amount of time. That's what I'm...
Well, so we've had some learning curves as we've been going. One of the biggest things that we found, and this is one of the biggest delays also, is the way the egress door swings. We've got a lot of buildings in the city where the door swings the wrong way, and that's a significant cost to have that replaced. So what initially we were kind of giving them a little bit extra time to fix it. Then we realized that it's such a cost, in addition to the fees, that maybe we'll, that particular issue, we won't hold everybody 100% compliant for that this year, and maybe that will be the focus of next year. Everybody will have, so now we're talking about lowering the fees. Hopefully their building will be up to shape, and then we can start addressing those things that might be a little bit more costly and say, all right, and we would give them advance notice of that too. That wouldn't be like, we're going to come through next month and you have to have it done by the end of the month. If we start at the beginning of the year and say, and maybe give them a time frame, give them a year to get that done, they've kind of been grandfathered all this time. There shouldn't be any left, but there's still been. We've been working with them about the thumb latches. Bob described that. A lot of the businesses, due to break-ins, they use a deadbolt thumb latch on the door. Well, the fire code says that it has to be a single action door mechanism, so that way if a firefighter's in the building or anybody trying to get out and they come up to the door in a panic, it either has to be a single push, a single turn. It can't be a latch and a door handle. It has to be a single action to get out the building in a safe manner. A lot of them swing inwards, and in a panic you're pushing to get out instead of pulling towards you to get out. So those are going to have to be addressed in the future, and it's going to be a significant cost to the businesses, but eventually it's going to have to be done. Right now we've been letting them get away with keeping the thumb latch, but locking. You can get a thumb latch that locks in an open position, and then we make them put a sign on it that says, the door's open.
Okay. Any further comments? Then the chief prepared this for us with 3 different options. And the purpose of the study session here is to give them direction of which way we would like to see this go. So I think that if we can have the council members give their suggestions on whether to accept one of the current options that are here, or give them direction of what they would like to see with the fee implementation, or when the inspections are done. Does that sound fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. Who would like to start? Well, I can start. I would go with the chief's recommendation of option number 2, maybe with some slight variations, but that's what I'm thinking of right now.
Your
Anyone
Honor,
else?
are we going to give the audience, the business people who have come down, the chance to say what they think about this?
Well, we can with Tim, with time approaching, but I would like to get from council where they're headed to give them direction so that we can proceed and get this put to bed.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Who would like to go first?
I agree, option 2 seems to be the best option, but I would like something put in there and about the amount of time too.
The amount of time
For things to progress to get to where it needs to be after the inspection, to be in compliance.
Okay,
I like option 2.
I like option 2, but like to make a comment. I like to get stuff I wish I would have had this ahead of time, even though we have the study session, only because I like to digest what I'm reading, and that's me. It's not I'm just making a comment. I'd like to get study sessions that are presented like this ahead of time, either emailed or something, so I can take a look at it. But to answer your question, option 2 is the same thing. I don't have a problem with that. That looks like it gives, which was the main course of the complaints, was the fees. That's what they were talking about.
we're not making a final decision tonight.
Oh, I thought that's what, okay, I was just going to say,
No,
okay.
This is just a recommendation to have them
Gotcha.
go back and work. If
Gotcha.
necessary, we can have a whole nother study session.
Gotcha. I'm sorry, I
Before we
misunderstood.
get this put to bed.
Okay, but
Okay.
that's leaning towards option 2, yes. Sorry.
Your Honor, I'm pretty good with option 2 as far as this goes. I agree with Larry, though. I mean, I would have liked to had this a little ahead of time, because I would have liked to spend some time with the business people saying, what do you think of this, that, and the other thing, and get their input, because they're going to have to deal with this. I mean, we can make the rules and the laws and everything, but they have to live it, and I want their input before I make any final decision.
Right. And my apologies. My intent was to have that to you a little sooner than I got it to you. I apologize.
Okay, anything else? So, Chris, do you have any?
Yes, option 2 is good. I agree with Councilman Higgins and with the chief that on much larger items where it's just a matter of finding the contractor and all that, giving them up to, the next inspection to work on it, and that kind of good grace period there, that's what's going to help build a relationship with the entire business community. Thank you.
Option 2 is pretty good, but you need to put in writing the limits of how you're going to let people go for the violations. If you want to say the third time's a charm, then you're screwed. That's fine. But we need to get a limit on how many times you can just go back and say, "Oh, I'll see you next week. See you next week."
Right. Understood.
Okay, well, thank you. Do we have business, did you want to?
I just want to clarify, you also want us to look at, for those businesses that we can get in and out very quickly, some type of discount as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
I would definitely.
I just wanted to make sure.
yes.
As long as through the chair, as long as it's a policy, is what I'm saying. Okay, all right.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
one other thing that I didn't mention is, and I know this happens on other type of inspections that we do, when we tell the business person, you need to do this, this, and this, and we go back and they've done this and this and this, then we say, well, wait a minute, we didn't see this last time. Now you got to do this. And how many times are we going to add on to the original, or would that be next inspection that they'd have
Yeah,
to?
it would be the next inspection.
All right.
They said when they come through and they do their re-inspections, if they missed it, they missed it. They'll
Because
get to
that's
next
the
thing.
main complaint that I hear right now with our rentals,
Right.
We'll give somebody a list of things to do, and they'll do all of them, and then they'll say, well, yeah, we didn't catch this, this, and this, and it just gets to be a circus.
Right.
By a show of hands, there are business owners that would like to be heard in reference to this? Okay, just so that I would get an idea of how much time to allow. We have several minutes, so ma'am, go ahead. Just identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Debbie Kaplani from Kaplani Insurance, and option 2, I don't really like, for the basic fact that you can have an office that is 5,000 square feet, and all we're doing in there is pushing paper. People may come in, but then they leave. There's no cooking, there's no habitational. So I think that you need to make the schedule more for the exposure of the occupant than the square footage. And plus, you got to remember, a lot of these businesses are getting inspected every year by their insurance companies. They're going through and they're making sure that the exit signs are working and that the smoke detectors work, and if there's cooking, they go more into depth. Of course, if there's a restaurant, you got to check and make sure that the hood and ducts are clean and that the suppression system is serviced, the fire extinguishers are a whole lot of other exposures exist per the occupant. So I think it should be more driven per occupant than square footage.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's the point that I was trying to get at a little bit earlier. You could have a gas station that's 3,000 square feet, and then an accounting office is 3,000 square feet. There isn't any possible way that those would be the same as far as possible damages from gas or flames or that type of thing. And that's one of the things I'd like to see, a distinction between the type of service that they're providing in that building.
Well, I had
Okay,
I'm
further
sorry.
discussion?
Well, I was just going to say that, I had lunch today with the Masonic Temple that's right down here on Cleophas, right on Southfield, and they haven't been inspected on how long, and I know they do cooking down there because I go down for dinners down there. So if somebody's inspected them, they ain't inspected them, and that's no disrespect to them. But they change. Where I was going with this is they have an executive board, and they change that executive board just like we have elections. So when you're trying to get a hold of somebody, there's nobody there Monday through Friday. So some of these places, they're not open, where you can get a hold of somebody, and they change officers, and they don't really notify anybody. So when you're trying to, as a compliance person or a fire department person, you might be dealing with somebody this year, next year, you're dealing with somebody completely new. So keep that in mind as we talk about not all these businesses, but some of these businesses, because there's only as many businesses we have as different caveats we have of how they're done. And I think that's what we're talking about, is how we look at the rules and regulations now. But I was surprised to hear the comment about the inspection, because if it is, how come we're inspecting all these ones and finding all this stuff? If the insurance company's inspecting some of these places, and I'll just make that comment, I don't understand, somebody's not doing their job, not us, but on the other end, because that would eliminate the time we spent to look at some of these businesses, because they have to get the insurance certificate. I mean, obviously, you'd think somebody would look at it. So that was interesting. Thank you for that comment. I appreciate it.
They may not have insurance if they're not up to compliance.
Okay, so a lot of them,
There's no law that says you have to have it.
they don't inspect it like on a regular basis.
But if they purchase it, they do.
Okay,
But
all
if
right.
they decide not to purchase insurance, then no.
Okay.
There's nobody going out.
I'm sorry, thank you for clearing that up. Thank you.
All right, further discussion from council?
Your Honor, I
Yes.
have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
I think that when we're talking square footage, 3,000 square feet, no matter what kind of business it is, our inspectors are walking every bit of it. So it's still 3,000 feet is 3,000 feet, no matter what business you are.
Okay, is there
That's true.
anything further? All right, then we will, we need a resolution to end this? We can?
Absolutely.
I'll entertain a resolution to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Higgins?
Yes.
Councilman Darzinski?
Yes.
Kelsey?
Yes.
Parkinson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Ross?
Yes.
And Mayor Carnes?
Yes. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. Lieutenant Wright, thank you also for taking the time to be here today, and we are adjourned.